positive 4, and then goes back down, and then the arrows, and that's it. Alright, so for 35, same thing, we're going to answer amplitude period, and then, or any other transformation. So here, for f of x, the amplitude is 1, and the period is 2 pi over pi, which pi's cancel, so we have a 2. For g of x, it's amplitude 1, the same period, 2 pi over pi, so it's 2. And this one has a vertical translation, 1 unit up. Okay? Alright, so 35, the the period is 2, so I'm going to label the fourth tick mark with a 2, and I know it's not drawn to scale, because on the y-axis, the second tick mark is to 2, so that doesn't really matter as long as you're consistent within the axis. So here's 1, 1/2, and 3/2. I'll do the same thing on the left side. -2, -1, -1/2, -3/2. Okay, so for cosine, the zeros are 1/4 of the way and 3/4 of the way. So that would be here and here. Maximum is at the beginning and the end. Beginning, end. And minimum is in the middle, right here. So I'll just go ahead and draw the dots on the left side, on the negative side, because they want 2 periods. So the zeros are 1/4 and 3/4 of the way. The maximum is the beginning and the end, and it's already there, and the minimum is in the middle. Okay, so we're just going to connect these dots with as smooth curve as you can. Smooth the curve as you can. So this is going to go like this, and this goes back down, this goes back down. Okay, so that's f of x. G of x has a vertical translation, so I'm going to use a dotted line. Let me see if I can make it not so bright. Oh, I'll keep that one. This is just to help, this is just to guide you in plotting the points. It's not part of the function. Okay, so the zeros for cosine are 1/4 and 3/4 of the way. So that would be right here and right here. So here's 1/4 and 3/4 of the way. The maximum is beginning and end. So it's one unit up from the new kind of x-axis. So it would be right here and right here. On the left side, it'd be at -2 and at and at 0. It's already there. The minimum is in the middle. So from the dotted line, you go down 1 unit, so you land on the x-axis right there at 1, and also at -1 right there. So now we connect the points. Oops, missed the dot right there. And then it goes back down. Okay. Now the yellow line that I have there, you can erase it if you'd like, so that it doesn't look as cluttered. Whoops, I erased more than I should have. But anyway, that's fine. So, right there. Alright, so 37, we have amplitude of 1/2. And there's a reflection over the x-axis. Okay, the period is 2 pi over 1/2, so that becomes 4 pi. For g of x, the amplitude is 2, and the period is 2 pi over 1/4, which is 2 pi times 4, which is 8 pi. Okay, so 37 has an amplitude of 1/2 and a period of 4. So, and then sine, it's a sine function, so we know it has the zeros at the beginning, middle, and end. So here's the beginning, Notice I didn't label all the tick marks because it would get too crowded, and you wouldn't be able to read it. Here's the middle, and here's the end, because the period for the f of x function is 4 pi. Okay, the amplitude is 1/2, and there's a reflection, so the maximum is 1/4 of the way. So instead of having it at 1/2, it's going to be negative 1/2. And then the minimum is 3/4 of the way, but instead of having it at negative 1/2, it's going to be positive 1/2. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw another period to the right. So that's my beginning, middle. This is the end. And the maximum is actually at the bottom because of the reflection, and the minimum is actually at the top because of the reflection, because of the negative. So here are two periods of this sine function for f of x. Here's the second period. Okay, so it's only asking for two periods, so I'm graphing them on the right side. For the other function, the amplitude, the period is 8 pi, so beginning, middle, end, and I'm going to do the other period on the left, so beginning, middle, and the end is already there. The amplitude is 2, so 1/4 of the way, which would be at 2 pi. It goes up here. And the minimum is 3/4 of the way, so that would be at 6 pi. So it would be right here. And then on the left side, the 1/4 of the way would be negative 6 pi. That's where you have the maximum. And negative 2 pi would have the minimum. Okay? So here is one period. It's kind of... Okay. And then here's the end of the second period right there. Okay? So there you have it. For number 39, f of x, this amplitude is 1 and the period is 2 pi. And for g of x, the amplitude is 1 and the period is 2 pi, but this one does have a horizontal translation. And it goes pi over 2 to the right. Okay? Alright, so this is a sine function for f of x. So the zeros are beginning, middle, end. The period is 2 pi, and I've already labeled the x-axis, so here's the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay, the maximum is 1/4 of the way, and the minimum is 3/4 of the way of the period. So this problem does not tell you to graph two periods, so I'm just going to graph one and see. Okay, right there. Okay, the g of x function has a translation to the right, so I'm going to move the y-axis over to the right, pi over 2 units, which would be 1 tick mark right here. Okay, so that's the yellow line. That's where I'm starting my beginning period. Okay, for cosine, the zeros are 1/4 and 3/4 of the way, so that would be here and here. The maximum is at the beginning and the end, so that would be here and here, and the minimum is in the middle. So in the middle, I'm talking about the middle. This is the beginning, 1/4, middle, 3/4, and end. So the middle is right here. Okay, so that would be right here. Okay, connect the points and you see what's happening. It's the same exact graph. Okay, it goes one over the other. So it's asking you make a conjecture about the functions. F of x and g of x are the same. F of x and g of x are the same. They give the same graph. For number 41, f of x, the amplitude is 1 and the period is 2 pi. For g of x, the amplitude is 1, but there's a reflection over the x-axis. the period is 2 pi, and this one has a horizontal translation, pi over 2 to the right. Okay? Okay, so f of x will be in red, and it's cosine. So that one has the zeros 1/4 and 3/4 of the way. The period is 2 pi, so 1/4 would be here and 3/4 would be here. Maximum is at the beginning and the end, and minimum is in the middle. Okay, so here's 1, oops, and it goes back down. Okay, for g of x, there's a translation to the right, pi over 2 units. So I'm gonna add the vertical, the y-axis. I'm gonna move it over pi over 2 units, so it goes right here. Okay, so now this would be the beginning, the 1/4, the middle, the 3/4, and the end would be right here. Okay, so it's a sine. So for sine, the zeros are beginning, middle, and end. So that would be right here, and right here. Okay. Maximum is 1/4 of the way, but then it has a reflection, so that makes it a minimum. So it would be right here. And minimum is 3/4 of the way, but then again there's a reflection, so that would make it a maximum. Okay. So we connect the points. And just like in the previous one, we see that both functions give you the same graph. So f of x and g of x represent the same graph. So the amplitude is 4 and the period is 2 pi. Okay, so the period is 2 pi, so I count 4 tick marks, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that would be my 2 pi. This is the middle. This is pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. And then so the next period would be at 4 pi, right? So that's 4 more tick marks. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 4 pi. And I'll just label 3 pi. And that should be enough for now. Okay, so I'll use red. For sine, the zeros are beginning, middle, and end. Okay? Maximum is 1/4, 1/4 of the way. So that would be at pi over 2. Up 4, and then minimum is 3/4 of the way. That's -4. Oops, wrong spot right here. Okay, for the next period, the beginning would be like your 2 pi. That'd be the beginning. Then 3 pi would be the middle, and 4 pi would be the end. Okay, 1/4 of the way would be at 2 1/2 pi, and 3/4 of the way would be at 3 1/2 pi. Be about here. Okay, so now we connect the points. Here's the first period right here, there, and then here's the second period. And that's it. So the amplitude is 1/4 and the period is 2 pi. Alright, so the period is 2 pi, so I'm going to count 4 tick marks, and that's what I'm going to label 2 pi. So 1, 2, 3, 4, this is 2 pi. So this is pi over 2, and 3 pi over 2. And then I'll just label this is 3 pi, and this is 4 pi. So that's for the second period. So now I'm going to graph cosine. The zeros are 1/4 and 3/4 of the period. So remember, period is 2 pi for this problem, right? So this would be 1/4 and this would be 3/4 of the way. Maximum is at the beginning and end of the period. Now the amplitude is 1/4. Notice how I used 4 lines for half. So that means that 1/4 would be right here. All right. So at 2 pi it goes back to 1/4. And the minimum is in the middle. So the middle would be pi. So it goes down to -1/4. Okay, so we can connect these now. Okay, so now we're ready for the next period. 1/4, sorry about that. So anyway, 1/4 and 3/4 is where you find the zeros, so that would be here and here. And then the maximum is 1 beginning and end of the next period. And then the minimum would be in the middle, so that would be right here. So we connect the points, and it goes back down there, and that's it.